What's up, guys? Happy Wednesday night. Welcome to Deep in the Plus. I'm Rob Whiteside, and tonight we're going to be reviewing The Prince of Persia. And with me to review it is the Prince of WDWNT, Tyler Mann.
Oh, that was perfect timing. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on, Rob.
Wow, at least you're not being overly dramatic. Thanks so much for keeping it low-key. I appreciate that. So, I've been wanting to review this one for a while. I feel like this one is a kind of a sort of a hidden gem type of a thing. I mean, this one was one that I think it was like $180 million to make, and it made $334 million at the box office. So you wouldn't really say it was a flop necessarily, but I think they expected bigger things from it. But if you look at like Metacritic and places like that, they just demolished this movie, and I don't think they should. I mean, it's based on the game Prince of Persia, the game series, but there was obviously a game called The Sands of Time, and it's just, I feel like it's got all of the elements of a really great movie all put together. Do you think that there's a reason people didn't connect with this early on?
I mean, we've watched it now, so we certainly know there's a few things in the movie that are like, it just, we'll talk about it, but I genuinely think the acting and just the plot was just a little too much, too soon, maybe. There was a lot happening. I felt like as I was watching this movie, I was trying to play Sonic 06. Like, and I was like, what is happening? Like, there's so many moving parts to this movie. And there's always like a lot of exposition happening, and I feel like that's why it was just a little too high fantasy than just being a silly video game type movie, maybe.
Yeah. No, I guess I get that. So this is a movie that was produced by Jerry Bruckheimer. It was 2010. And it was they put a lot of money into this movie. I mean, it is really well done, and I think that they put a lot into it. But from an actor standpoint, you've got Jake Gyllenhaal, who is the lead, who is the draw, and then you have Alfred Molina, you have Ben Kingsley, and after that, it kind of slumps off as far as like, known names at the time. So I think they put a lot of their money into the movie itself, into the production value of this movie. And for those of you who have not seen it, it starts out is, they're giving the history of Persia and the Persian Empire and talking about this king who comes into a village and he finds this little boy who's an orphan, and the boy shows a lot of courage and heart, and he decides to take the boy in and make him one of his sons. He already has two sons. He makes him another son, and now there are three princes. So they then kind of cut ahead to them all grown up and them going off into war. So there was a lot of, here's what Persia was, here's what happened with this little boy, how he became part of this family, how he became a prince, and then we fast forward to it. Do you think they gave enough information in the beginning of the movie, though? I mean, I know you said it's kind of high concept, so...
They gave enough to start and get you to understand what Dastan's backstory is. He's supposed to be this sort of unlikable character at the beginning because they are going to invade this city. They're going to invade the city because they hear that they have weapons, and then the Princess Tamina says, "We don't have any weapons, but I will marry one of your sons," or whatever. We do understand why they are trying to raid the city in the end of the movie, but at this time we don't know why, and it just seems like they're kind of being bad guys, and so, but we're supposed to like him for this backstory where he had nothing and now he has all these things. But I feel like Aladdin definitely gives a little bit of that moment where we do see like his humility and that he is sort of a good person deep down. We don't really get that from Dastan. I feel like we should have gone a little bit. We should have had a few more moments during the movie where we see little bits of him growing up, and that he is a little bit better than his brothers, or more of a good person. I feel like we needed those moments, because the rest of the movie, it's like Val Kilmer and Willow. It's just he keeps doing bad stuff, and you're like, when are we going to get the moment where we should be able to trust and like this character?
Well, and they kind of do it a little bit in exposition, talking about you're the good brother, you're the one that sees things, like, you know, he's a rascal for sure. Like when we first see him, he's supposed to be in a planning meeting, and instead he's out like fighting. But that's really just an opportunity to see Jake Gyllenhaal without a shirt on. I mean, so that's needed for the movie, probably. So then
you gotta have someone shirtless at some point. Because
I mean, if you pay for Jake Gyllenhaal, get all of Jake Gyllenhaal. I mean, there's a reason you put him in the movie, right? And speaking of him being in the movie, he's the only one that speaks. He is the only American actor in it. Everyone else is a British actor and has a British accent, and so he is faking his way through a British accent in this, which I think he does okay. It's not like a Kevin Costner, I forget it every now and then type of a thing. It was actually pretty good, but I don't understand why the Persian Empire has a British accent. So that's a little bit weird to me. So, but
it's like Beauty and the Beast. Some of them have French accents, some of them have British accents. Belle has none. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I've got to kind of like have a suspension of disbelief about the fact that they're all British accents in the Persian Empire. And, you know, and it's, you know, that's Egypt, that's Iran, that's not British. Anyway, so now, you know, they're explaining to him, you know, the whole thing about how he's like kind of, you know, a little bit of an outsider. He's a little bit more of a man of the people. He's the guy who's leading kind of like the guerrilla warfare attack, as opposed to his brother, who is doing it the way it's always been done, a very straightforward attack on, you know, wherever they're attacking. So, I feel like they tell that a little bit through this, but you do make a great point about Aladdin and Dastan being very much the diamond in the rough. You know, that
very
he was
much
plucked,
Aladdin.
Yeah, that he was plucked from a village where there was a little kid stealing something, and then he fights, and there's this whole rooftop run, which is very game-like. That's very game mechanics. And as a, you know, as someone who's casually played Prince of Persia, it is interesting when I get to see the game mechanics happening. So, you know, it's kind of disguised as parkour in this, but some of the game mechanics happen. And I think that very much like an MCU movie or, you know, where if you're a comic book fan, there are things that you understand more so than if you're a casual viewer. I think that if you were a big Prince of Persia gaming fan, you would get a little bit more out of this. Some of the things like the when he's standing up on top of the building and they do sort of the 360 camera angle.
Yeah, that was the dumbest part of the movie, because
it's just
he
very
climbs
Assassin's
up there.
Creed. Yeah,
I was like, is he gonna do an Assassin's Creed? And Tom was like, this movie, I mean, Prince of Persia kind of was the Assassin's Creed at the time, where it was a lot of focusing on like one of the primary gameplay loops of that game was that it was a lot of climbing and platforming, because there was an original Prince of Persia that was a platformer. It's a lot of jumping and being creative with getting around the environment. And then the actual games or the more recent games that this movie's based off of, were very much like jump across these rooftops or, you know, climb this wall, which they did in the movie because that's what's in the game. But also, like, they could have integrated it more into the movie. In this one, it's more like if you cut out all the bits where he does that, you have like your own separate thing happening. It's never part of the dialogue or the plot.
I appreciate the fact that it is a nod to the game, which is the source material, right? But it is not so much that you alienate the rest of the audience who doesn't know the game. Anybody who walked into a theater just to see Jake Gyllenhaal without his shirt on is going to be able to understand the movie at its base, and without actually having the ability to like know what the gaming mechanics are. However, there are a lot of things in it that, as I've played it before, I get like the wall runs that he does are very Prince of Persia. And you see a lot of that as he's a little boy in the village running from the guards before the king goes, oh, you know what, you're all right. You ran from my guards. You caused a lot of problems, but come on back and live with me. But when they fast forward again they're outside of a holy city. They've gotten word that there has been there's a spy who found weapons coming out of this holy city, and so they're not supposed to have weapons. They've decided that it's because they want to come and attack the king, and they're going to put a stop to it. The brothers have made this decision, led by their oldest brother, who is, the king to be, and so he and his uncle kind of counsel about it and decide they're going to attack the city. Because they think that there are weapons of mass destruction there. Sounds familiar. So they go in and they go find this, they put together their plan, and they say to Dastan, you're not going to take lead on this. The middle brother's taking lead. And so you're going to kind of sit out with your gang of guys, your homies, and you're going to be over here on the side, and you're going to wait, and we're going to do this. And he goes, no, I'm not going to do that. And he finds his own way in. And as he's doing that, they shoot arrows into the wall with him to climb up. And again, very game mechanic, right? It's very in-game to do how am I going to get up the wall? Well, he's going to shoot arrows, and he's going to climb all the way up the wall, gets to the top. And then there's a lot of it with the swinging rope, running along the wall, jumping from ledge to ledge. That part, again, is for the fans of the game, really. I mean, it's a good action scene, and it does stand alone, but it really does feel like it's for the fans, right?
Yeah, but in terms of action, those are the action scenes, other than, I guess, the ostrich chase. But those scenes are okay, but I remember I was like, do they ever stay on a single shot for more than 2 seconds? So as I'm watching the movie, I'm counting every time it cuts, and as I'm watching the movie, this is what it's like: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It takes 20 shots for him to jump across a roof, because it's clear it's not Jake Gyllenhaal doing these stunts, which is sorry, I ruined it for you. What's the Taken movies with Liam Neeson? Red Letter Media points that out, him just climbing over a fence is 20 cuts in 3 seconds, because it's just not him. And I always found that funny.
Right. So, okay, so he gets into the palace. Then because he has opened up the doors, now the king-to-be brother goes, oh, hey, Dastan has done it. He's opened up the east side. We're going to rush the east side. They go into and take over this holy city. And once they get in there to take it over, they go and they find the princess. And once they find the princess, she is
just praying.
Yeah.
She's bent over, and I'm like, that's not going to be her. She's going to have escaped. And then I'm like, oh no, that is her. Oh, okay. She literally just came into this room to pray. Okay, that'll stop the people invading your city.
So they find her, and she's basically there, and we don't know it at this point, but she is trying to protect this ancient dagger from these guys who have come to pillage the city. She doesn't understand why they've attacked. They've decided that it's because there are weapons and that they're defending themselves preemptively, which again always does good things. When if we learned anything from Civil War, you don't do that. Civil War,
and
the movie,
Dastan,
not the actual Civil War.
Yeah, Dastan bumped into a guy who was trying to smuggle the sword out, or the dagger, out of the city, away from all this, because they know that they were probably going to be looking for that. Dastan just keeps it, and then when his brother sees it, he's like, I want that dagger. And then Ben Kingsley's like, it's just a dagger, let him have it. So then Dastan hangs on to it, and then when the princess sees that he has it, there's a moment where they just wistfully stare at each other, and I'm like, is this supposed to be ooh, that's a handsome man, that's a pretty girl kind of moment?
No, I think this was her trying to scheme a way to get the dagger back away from him. So she's now decided, he has the dagger's more important than he realizes, and she's going to shadow him, stay close to him to make sure that she can get it. So then they cut over to the king shows up, and the king's like, what are y'all doing? Why did you ravage this holy city? And the guy's like, hey, Dad, we thought they were weapons. He's like, well, you better go find proof, because I don't think there are any. But while we're here, you might as well marry the princess. And, oh, by the way, I'm going to need a gift as, praise for this, this victory that you've had. And so Dastan doesn't have a gift. The brother presents him with this robe. He puts the robe on the king, And everything's cool for, I don't know, a couple minutes, and then all of a sudden the king
Yeah.
starts to burn alive inside of this cloak.
The cloak
And
itself was poisoned that caused like severe burns, like he
yeah.
was on fire. Which, okay.
Yeah, no, I mean it's weird. It's very weird. It's very weird, and it seems like a very unlikely way to kill him. But he dies, and so,
And then one guy yells out, "Who?" Or sorry, Dastan's like, "Somebody help him! Somebody help him!" And some guy's like, "Yo, Dastan gave him the cloak," and they're like, "Dastan killed him!" And I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like everyone turned on him because one person just shouted out, "Oh, yo, Dastan did it! He gave him the cloak."
but I mean, at
we
that
just
point,
gotta assume that was him.
at that point, you don't know who did it. You really don't. And if you're watching it for the first time, because it could have been the uncle, it could have been the either of the brothers who were in line for the throne. It could have been somebody inside the holy city. It could have been anybody who had done it at that point. But because he was the one that basically handed the gift to his father, he's the one who's seen as a traitor. Now, what I'm thinking immediately is he's the one with no, like zero motive to kill the king. Because
Correct.
he's not in line at all for the throne because he's not one of the actual princes. So
and they are giving him everything. So
right,
why
so,
would he
like,
want him dead?
There's no motive. He has no motive to do it. So I feel like that's a little bit of a plot hole right there, that there's no motive for him to have done it. But he decides that he doesn't want to stick around and get blamed for it. So he starts to run. The princess starts to run with them. They get out of the city. But she helps him escape. So I've got a question at this point. Is Princess Tamina, is she a Disney princess?
You know what? When I worked at Disney Store, there was always the question of, like, what is a Disney princess? Because Pocahontas and Mulan, they're not technically royalty. And I think Disney had even, like, addressed it in a video by saying that, like, a Disney princess is just any strong female. And they just left it at that because that explains why all these other characters are princesses and why they can justify selling all these toys to children.
Yeah.
Anyways, is she a princess? It is a Disney movie, technically.
Disney princesses can't be live action. Okay. I'm reading from the chat.
All right then.
And then Will says a weak plot in a video game movie. Like, that is a surprise, right? Now, again, I want to say that I feel like as a movie based on a video game, this one stands alone as a movie more than most I've seen. If you go to see Mortal Kombat, or if you go to see the Super Mario Brothers movie.
That was a treasure of a film.
Treasure. Bob Hoskins, we love you. So there's this one to me can stand alone from the source material because I do feel like it's actually a good fantasy movie on its own. So, it doesn't shove the video game stuff in your face. I don't feel like. Again, I think if you're a fan of the game, you see the things that are in it. But if not, I don't think you would even know as a video game movie, like based on a video game.
It definitely does not come off a video game movie the same way that, like, Angry Birds or that old Super Mario movie does, where it's like, let's shoehorn in the stuff from the game just because it's things people recognize. Who cares if it even makes sense? Can we talk about the next scene before we talk? Yes. Well, Sonic wasn't even a Sonic movie. Sonic, let's be fair, was just a talking magical animal movie that just happened to have
rings,
Eggman in it, and rings. Yeah, it was.
What did you want?
But anyways. The next scene is sort of the main point where the whole video game thing happens. The next scene, they're together. It's nighttime. There are these things called. I gotta look this up. Hang on. Assassins. It's not assassin. It's almost like you misheard the word assassin. They're called Assassins, which sounds funny even just saying it. And they are these skilled assassins, basically, that are sent by someone to just go kill Dastan and I guess retrieve the dagger. Dastan, while he's threatened by Tamina, just accidentally hits the button on there's literally a button. It could have just been touch the jewel, but it's press the button on the hilt of the blade, and he goes back in time he sees time reverse for him outside of his body, and he goes back to the beginning of his conversation with Tamina before she tries to allure him and then try and threaten him with a blade. And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I just watched you do this before. And she's like, what? And then she realizes he pushed the button because the sands are now out on the dagger. But this is the primary gameplay loop of the game, which is that at any point, if you're about to follow off a cliff or a ledge, you can reverse time a certain amount of time and try that again. The whole idea of the game is that, there's all this platforming, and if you fail, at least you can go back and try it instead of just having your character die, which is the whole point of this which is the point of the movie. They're after this dagger. And I think they do a good job of incorporating that because it becomes like a mini time travel bit for the film, that when something very drastic happens, he can temporarily go back in time. And right. I thought that was a good job. Like Tomb Raider, there's a lot of like exploration, but also like shooting gun action. And in the Angelina Jolie version, they really did do that. It didn't make for the most amazing storyline though. But the whole plot around this movie is about this dagger that everybody wants, and the whole Sands of Time thing being that Sonic 06 plotline that's towards the end of the movie. But yeah.
So I don't know that we see the Assassins or Assassins at this point. He is picked up by... He's going into the desert where he shouldn't be going because there is a rumor of somebody out there, and maybe that's who's out there. But he's found by Alfred Molina and his group of people who have apparently spread these rumors to keep people out of the desert. And so they go ahead and he makes a deal with them because he's been left for dead by the princess. He makes a deal with them to say, hey, if you find the princess, you can have her. I just want this knife she stole from me. And so they go through this whole process. They find her. Then they take her into their village, where they have the ostrich races, and they make her just like a serving girl in the ostrich races. So, I mean, that's some pretty big stuff. Like the ostrich races, I mean, this is unique, right? Like when do you normally see ostrich races, right?
Swiss Family Robinson.
Okay, well, I guess that's the same. But Alfred Molina, I mean, let's just talk about him for a second. He's so
the best part of this
good.
movie.
Yes, he's so good.
He's so funny in this movie.
My favorite. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, it's your turn. Take it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like my favorite Alfred Molina moment, like in history, is the "throw me the idol, I throw you the whip" line that he did in Raiders of the Lost Ark. But as in so many other things, he is just amazing. But I think his comedic timing in this one, he does bring a lot to this role.
This is what made me think that this movie was now The Mummy. It was very like, I was very like, I'm Rick and no one likes me. But I'm the main character. Here's my snarky sidekick female that hates me but will eventually like me by the end of the film. And then here's this chubby, funny side character who is somehow very likable. But Alfred Molina, I like him in other things as well. I love him in Chocolat. He's the multi-bear in Gravity Falls. He's obviously Doc Ock. He's so funny in this movie. I cannot remember a quote specifically. I would have to watch the movie again. But I remember anytime he was on screen and whatever he said got a genuine laugh from me. I was laughing at the rest of the movie because of how silly it was, but he was just doing good comedic bits. Yeah. And he has his own sidekick, Sesso, who's like another type of like assassin type character. I forget exactly the thing that they are called, but he's just able to shoot anyone and have perfect aim, and he's always just like, man, what are you doing? Did I not tell you not to kill that guy? Like, they just have a little bit of banter sometimes, and Sesso's kind of a silent character for most of the movie. They were just a delight. They were the best part of the movie.
They were just a delight. Yep. All right, so at this point, they have reunited. They've got this thing going on, and then they decide to escape from Alfred Molina and his team and go back to his father's funeral that's happening. And the princess is like, why would you want to do that? And he's like, if I get a message to my uncle and I show him this knife and I show him what it can do, then he's going to understand, and he's going to know that I didn't kill father, that it was somebody killed for this knife, and how cool it is, and that this was a reason that we invaded the holy city. And so he goes back in disguise to try to meet up with his uncle. He leaves him a note. The uncle comes and meets him. And then when the uncle meets him and then the guards show up, now you realize maybe the uncle is actually the one who murdered his own brother, which is very Lion King now. Let's compare it to Aladdin, and then let's now compare it to Lion King, because of, he's the Scar of this situation, Ben Kingsley is. And he says, oh, tell me, more about this knife. And, oh, just maybe you should give me that knife. And so when he opens it up, it's not a knife. It's actually like a walnut cracker, because now the princess has scammed him, stolen the knife, and headed out. And now he has no leverage, no nothing. And so now all the guards have been called and they're chasing after him, which again is a perfect opportunity for what? More video game mechanic type stuff. So the chase scene that he does here with his brother is like he's fighting with his brother, and you can see right here where he hits the thing, that side run. I mean, this is very right there, ledges. Like siding across the wall. That's definitely Prince of Persia all the way. He's doing all this stuff, which again, if you didn't know about Prince of Persia, you could just see this as it's hardcore parkour. But I mean, it's kind of neat the way he runs across the rooftops, and he's dodging all these arrows from all of these well-trained, soldiers. It's like stormtroopers. It can't hit him for anything, even though there's like 82 of them firing at him at the same time. But it's very, Prince of Persia from the game type of stuff. So, I mean, but to me that stuff is kind of fun, and it's very reminiscent of Indiana Jones when he's trying to, escape from the marketplace or something like that. I just think that it makes it fun. But if you do know the game, you know that this is part of what Prince of Persia is all about.
Yes, it definitely was more of that video game mechanic stuff. But at the same time, Dastan's like, I didn't kill father. And then he like shoots a guy in the chest with an arrow. And he's like, I didn't kill him, believe me. He doesn't present any evidence. And that's the other frustrating part about this movie is he's like, I'm innocent. And I'm like, tell them why. Tell them your evidence. Tell them what you know. Nobody ever talks properly in these movies. There's got to be a ton of secrets. Everybody's got to... communication.
If there was just better communication, movies would be 20 minutes long and not 2 hours long. So now the uncle knows that he knows about the knife and has suspicions about him. So they go and talk to the brother who's now king and says, hey, you want to go ahead and kill this guy. You don't want to bring him to trial, because the uncle's trying to make sure that he doesn't do exactly what you're saying, which is to spill the beans. And so he's like, yeah, you just want to go ahead and kill this guy. And so then he goes and he sees his creepy assassins, or whatever they are. Assassins is how I wrote it out, but it's very weird. So he goes and he sees these creepy guys who have been secretly training, but they were supposed to have been disbanded by the original king, and he's like, nah, I'm going to hold on to these guys because I might need them, and they're all still training in this underground secret Swiss bobsled facility. And so they go in, and he's like, they've got snakes all over the place, and why did it have to be snakes? And then he's like, yeah, you know what I need to do. Go get the knife. He's on the loose, and make sure you kill him. And so they head out, and it's just creepy.
I'm so sorry. That scene ends with them shooting an arrow over Ben Kingsley's shoulder just to show how good they are. But the arrow hits this plank of wood, and the wood chips that are like broken on the piece of wood looks like somebody just took an image of wood and overlaid it in Photoshop and then just painted a triangle like how wood should look. It looked so bad. Like, I very much, when I'm watching a movie, I'm looking at the filmmaking stuff, because I do a lot of filming and video and comics and making sure stuff's in the frame and it looks good. And then I see something like that in a movie that costs millions of dollars, and I'm like, Come on, you couldn't have just taken a composite of a piece of broken wood. It looked so bad. Are you going to try and pause it right at the bit? Oh. It's right here. And pause. Look how bad that looks. Look how bad that looks.
I don't know, dude. I think
terrible.
I definitely think at this point you're overthinking it, but it's fine. Everybody has their thing. It's fine. Yeah, it's like if you take anything away from this review, take away how bad that scene was. No, come on, man. But you do catch these little things as you're watching them over and over again. All right, so they go out into the desert to take the knife and to try to. They've got a new plan, and they want to take the knife and they want to hide it because they know now that the uncle has this ultimate plan to take the knife and to plunge it into the sands of time. And if he does that, he can rewind time and go back to before he saved his brother as a kid, let his brother die, and now he becomes king.
Even though the sands of time themselves would destroy everything.
But in the Prince of Persia game, it's different because the Sands of Time change people. Like everything is changed when the Sands of Time is released, and his father becomes like sand and like a zombie sort of a thing. So this is new territory for them when they're writing this story. And you know what? They probably didn't want to make it too confusing. And as you're hearing this, if you've never seen this movie, you're probably going, it's a little confusing. It's still a little confusing. It's pretty
confusing.
Yeah, because
I remember sitting there at the exposition parts and being like, what? I think I looked away for 1 second because I was watching with friends, and I was like, wait, I missed 10 seconds that explained a whole bunch of stuff. And it really was, I've been jokingly compared it to Sonic 06, which is a notoriously bad game. But the plot is almost identical of this, grand godly beast that's going to shoot flames across the entire city and kill everyone. But it was contained somehow. And now a girl needs to sacrifice herself so that they can make sure that these sands never get unleashed or something. It's almost identical to Sonic 06. And,
I got to stop you, though. I'm looking at the chat. And Dawn says, my interest was the shirtless Jake. And Courtney says, yup. I mean...
It's not the reason I watched the movie, but
that was
it certainly
the draw,
held
though.
my attention.
Jake Gyllenhaal is a draw. I mean, that's why they paid him all the money, because he was Jake Gyllenhaal. He didn't have the British accent. He had to add that on top. And you know what? Honestly, I think he did a really good job as an action hero in this one. I feel like he did.
He did a decent job, yeah.
I mean, to me, I think the Mysterio role is the one that is a better acting role that he did in the Spider-Man movies because you just hate him. I mean, you really pulls that off pretty well. But I do think that got to be shirtless, right? I mean, you pay all this money to get Jake Gyllenhaal.
You got to be shirtless.
You got to be shirtless. You got to have that.
We should watch John Carter next.
Yeah, exactly. So we're about halfway through, and something I've been doing for the past few shows I just wanted to mention, because we have 33 people watching. We have 27 likes, and it fluctuates in and out. But if we can get to 50 likes, we're going to open a Wishable. I have a Frozen Wishable. I don't have anything John Carter or Prince of Persia themed. Sorry. But, I mean, this one has Sven and Anna and Elsa. So if we can get to 50 likes before the end, we'll open it. Doesn't, we'll see if it happens. But, again, just if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and also give us a thumbs up because it really helps people find the show. So anyway, they're out there and they're trying to figure out how they're going to stop the uncle from releasing the Sands of Time. And so then Alfred Molina's team finds him again, captures him. Apparently, all of the ostriches have died except for one, and for some reason they brought that one with them.
This was one of the best scenes. He's like, do you know that ostriches are suicidal? I gotta stay with this ostrich every single night because I'm afraid of what he would do with himself. I love this ostrich. It was just so much. It was just such a. He is so rich in character in that way that the things he cares about as his character are completely different than everybody else in this movie. He's like, I only care about these ostriches and my business, and you ruined all of it. And they're like, the whole world's gonna get destroyed. He's like, all my ostriches have been destroyed. Like, at least he's like, he's got to be having so much fun in this scene. The scene is probably one of my favorite ones with Alfred William in it.
But again, really super weird, right? That he brings it with him. It's like, this is the only one that survived, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and bring this with me just to make sure to keep him by my side. I guess the whole idea is that he keeps trying to kill himself, so they have to keep trying to make sure that he doesn't. So they have to keep an eye on him.
Yep.
So they've come out here and they're like, we're going to take our pound of flesh. And he's like, well, they're trying to tell them like, hey, this is this underhanded deed that's going to happen. And in the middle of the night, they're attacked by these assassins, and they're attacked by the snakes. And so he uses, again, that game mechanic of the rewinding time, which is very much like this episode of Rick and Morty I saw recently, where he gets to do the save points and like the respawns. So it's kind of like that he has to, like, he sort of respawns back to a minute beforehand. So in this particular case, he uses it to his advantage. He sees all these snakes popping up, then he kind of makes a mental note of where they're all coming, and so he rewinds, and then he attacks them all, and they're like, wow, you're awesome. How did you do that? And so at this point, it's kind of like in Mandalorian where they've, now all of a sudden the bad guys are on your side because you've won them over. In The Mandalorian, it was like when Grogu healed the guy, and he's like, oh, okay, I'm on your side now. So in this one, they're like, okay, you saved us. We're on your side. We'll help you get to this temple where you've got to put the knife in, and we'll all be safe. And so when they get there, everybody's dead. The assassins are way ahead of them. And then there's this whole huge thing where he finally gets his middle brother to believe him seconds before his middle brother dies. That is kind of like the whole thing about all of these things. He's almost there. Like, he gets to the village and he thinks he's going to get his uncle to fix it for him, but he can't. And then he gets out and they're going to do this new thing, but now here comes the assassins. And then here's the thing where his brother's caught up to him.
Brother believe him.
Yeah, and he believes him.
I think at the moment he goes, I believe you, brother. I was like, come on, movie. It's like anyone he gets to believe the truth about him in this movie, they immediately die. Like, anyone he gets on his side, they're like, oh, you didn't kill your uncle. And then the animator just suffers a fatal heart attack. Like, It just happens just to be like, nope, sorry, Dastan. You got to keep trying.
The movie giveth, the movie taketh away. So
and that was like an emotional moment too. That was the few moments that I thought the movie was getting actually really emotional. I was like, oh no, the brother died. Of course he died, but at the same time I'm like, but they did build up a little bit of the relationship between Dastan and his two brothers, that when this brother finally is able to like trust and believe him, he immediately dies, and Dastan is like, no, like he has a no moment. And I was like, that was actually a pretty well done moment. Also, the time travel bit, that previous scene where he's like, they only do it a few times, the activating the dagger.
Well,
I wish they did it more. Yes, they have a certain amount of sand. It's not like Groundhog Day, where he could just he could try flirting with Tamina like 17 times in a row until he finally makes her like him or whatever. It was.
Well, I don't know that we said that from the beginning. That's kind of like, to make this thing not overpowered, it has to have fuel, and the fuel is the sand, and the sand is rare. So he can't just use this to fix things over and over and over again. And it can only go back a minute in time. So then he can't go back to where, before his father was killed. So it can only go back for a minute. But it's just one of those things where, just to keep it from being overpowered, they have to. They have to use it like, limitedly. So here's the scene where the he hits the button on the knife just as the snake's coming up at him, and then he does the whole rewind in time thing. So
every
he goes
time
back
they
and he sees
did
where
the rewind, it was cool. Like it definitely looked cool, and then when he uses his knowledge, it also felt really cool. That's the kind of moment in the game where you're like, yeah, I know all this stuff. And then Professor Quirrell over there is like, what? This was a great scene.
Yeah, no, it was really good. So now they've got the, they've got the dagger, they've got their trust, and then they went up to the mountain. The brother dies, and now they've got these assassins take the dagger from the girl, from the princess, by sending a snake in to eat the dagger and then carry the dagger back out. Which again seems a little bit over the top, but whatever. Here's another plot hole to me, though. Why wouldn't they just take the knife back to the uncle? Why did they take it and put it back up in the palace where they found it and then put one guard on it?
Wasn't there something about like that city had some sands of time? Tamina had some around her neck, which is how he was able to do the second time travel bit. But there's like a city where there is some of these special sands, and they wanted them both in the same place or something. They just didn't know how to find it in the third location, which is why they stole it.
Put it on display, though, and just like, set up for them to come get it. I mean, that seems a little weird, too. So
villain, evil, we want you to come so we can kill you easily.
So Alfred Molina's number 2 comes in, and he's the knife guy, and so he's going like mano a mano, knife guy versus knife guy. And they're having this big fight with the knives in the palace. He's trying to get to the knife, and again, sort of a video game thing. Like let's hit this thing up high and find a way to get to this guy around the corner. So they're fighting to get this or he's trying to protect the knife, and this guy's trying to get it. And the knife's just sitting there. It's just dumb. Like, why? If this is that important and he's searched this hard for it, why doesn't he just like surround it with like 82 of these dudes rather than just having one dude up here doing it?
Put it in a hole and then surround the hole with snakes. Yeah. No, I think they honestly just wanted them to come so they could kill them all. But then Sesso grabs it and flings it out of the window, and they catch it, and then they realize, oh, if he's not coming back, he's dead. And I was like, oh, because like that they just had friendly banter in those scenes between Sesso and Alfred Molina, and I was like, oh, I feel like bad that this character is dead. And then that's when I started thinking how the movie was going to end, because there are so many main of these main characters getting killed off. But anyway,
right. So then we get to this point in the movie where the knife is gone. But Jake Gyllenhaal gets the knife so he could take it back to his brother, who's now the king, and say, hey, look, brother, I want you to believe me. And so he shows him the knife, and he cuts him, he kills himself with it and hands it to him as like, hit the button and you'll know everything. And so he hits the button. The brother has his own little out of body experience with the knife. Now he believes him again. And then immediately gets killed. So I mean, this is not good. This is not good.
This was the best scene in the movie, honestly. They spent the whole time building up this thing where he's trying to convince his brothers, and in the ultimate act of courage, which he's supposed to have been exuding this whole movie, he's like, the only way I can prove to you that Uncle is trying to steal this and that it's real is I'm going to tell you exactly how it works, and then I'm going to kill myself. And I hope and I trust that you, my brother, will use it. And then he does. And then once he's like, he stops Dastan from killing himself a second time, and Dastan's like, oh my God, you used it. Thank you. And then but they know his brother watches him die, and then Ben Kingsley immediately walks into the room and sees his dead body. So after time rewinds, they're talking and they're like, oh my God, this thing is real. And I'm like, Ben Kingsley's going to walk in. Ben Kingsley's going to walk in. Do you guys want to move? Do you guys want to get out of the room? You know he's going to walk in. And then he walks in, and then they just kill the brother. And I'm like, come on. I was like, did he just die as well? Come on, movie.
Yep. Come on, movie. Well, again, I mean, you got to give this movie... it just wants to keep going. It's an hour and 57 minutes. It just wants to keep going.
It is pretty long,
as they go back through this, and now the uncle has the knife. he wants to go find the Sands of Time, and they've got to go underneath the village or underneath the city. They find the Sands of Time. And there's, again, a very Raiders of the Lost Ark thing when she is like saying, "Walk where I walk." There are a lot of booby traps. We don't want anything to happen. And then he steps in the wrong place.
I was watching it. I was like, "Hey, you know, it's a good movie." What's The Last Crusade? Because that's exactly what that ending felt like.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm going to go back to the fact that we've compared it to a lot of movies. It has elements of a lot of movies that we like. I mean, I kind of feel like without the comedy, got some Princess Bride thing about the adventure that they go on. I think that it's got, you know, Indiana Jones vibes with it. I think that it's got sort of Aladdin to it. There are a lot of things about this movie that, again, stand alone from the video game. But I think there's just a lot going on.
When they were walking through the desert, and she's like, "I'm a princess." I was waiting for like Dot Matrix and Barf to come around the corner with them. Like, it felt like Spaceballs, where he's like, "I'm the roguish guy who's helping you, and you're a stuffy princess." It felt like Spaceballs. Anyways, the ending.
So they take the uncle. Everything works out for the uncle. He gets down to the sands. He throws the knife in, but Dastan gets there and kind of holds the knife too, and they're kind of wrestling back and forth. And at this point, I'm thinking, why can he not beat his uncle? His uncle has to be 30 years older than he is, and it's Ben Kingsley, and he's like, his uncle's a better fighter. His uncle's stronger than he is. Why can't he just take his uncle, push him over to the side, and fix this? But he's wrestling with his uncle, and it's like, oh, this is too heavy to me to get pushed. He's not magic. He doesn't, I don't understand why his uncle is able to do this. It's just bothersome. So then he finally pushes the uncle away, or the uncle falls aside, and he's the sole holder of the dagger, and everything, and he pulls the dagger out, which stops the Sands of Time from escaping, because it was going to be devastating if it happened. And he pulls it out, and it rewinds.
Falls over the edge of that cliff as well, and he's holding on to her, and she's like, "You have to stop the Sands. Let me go." And he's like, "No." And then he accidentally lets her go, and she's like, "Ah!" Like, she lets loose this blood curling scream, even though it
was like, "Let me go, let me go." No, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
I didn't think you'd do it.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
And then, so that's when I was like, wait, she's dead too? And then I knew exactly what was about to happen.
So I'm seeing Groundhog Day, Palm Springs, any time loop movies in the chat. They're talking about that. Somebody, I guess, compared it to Goonies and said, and Arch Fox says it's no Goonies. Yeah. And then Dawn said nothing is Goonies. So, by the way, I went to a Comic-Con once. Sean Astin was on stage. Somebody came up to ask a question and said, I just want to say Goonies never die. And he said, I'm sorry, what did you say? And the person said,
no!
Goonies never die. And he goes, I'm sorry, what did you say? And they said, Goonies never die. And he's like, audience, can you help them out? And it's Goonies never say die. Like really just embarrass this person in front of the whole place. And it was kind of funny, but it was kind of mean too. Little Goonies side note. Anyway,
Sean Astin didn't remember the Goonies, which would have been worse.
So anyway, they go back into the Sands of Time, take him back to the very moment where they were about to storm the castle. They've already broken through the gates of the holy city. They're about to storm the castle and take over the princess and all that. And when they go to do that, Dastan is like, wait a minute, stop. You can't do this because there are no weapons. This was all a fake. These were this is all the uncle doing this. And then the uncle's like, oh, I guess he's a little bit burned from the sun. We need to just
he's like,
yeah. So he's trying to, I don't know, sidestep the whole thing. Right. So then, there's the brother comes up and is like, hey, look, you know what, let's get the spy. Let's ask him, interrogate him a little bit more and ask him if this is true. And then Ben Kingsley starts this little rumble, which I think is he throws Ben Kingsley over the side because, again, at this point, he should be able to overpower him. I mean, he's Jake Gyllenhaal. We've seen him without a shirt on. We know he's muscular. He throws him over the side. He throws him over the side, and he's like, I know what you have, I know what you're doing. I can't believe you would do all this. And so the uncle's like, oh, I'm so frail. And so then, as he starts to walk away, he pulls out a knife and tries to kill him. And then the brother kills the uncle. This uncle who has been this cherished advisor for years and years. And he kills the uncle in the streets, having only learned of the treachery minutes ago. And
it's just the thing of, like, the father's trusting. Like, at this point, he needed to make it to convince his brother. He's like, brother, I am not lying. Like, the uncle's like, don't listen to Dastan. What does he know? And he's like, please, brother. Like, he really is just trying to get him on his side. And then in that moment, he's like, yeah, let's get the spy. And then the uncle's like, well, time to start killing some people. And so in that moment, it's like, yeah, their relationship is like finally, like, everyone finally trusts each other, which is, I genuinely another moment that I ended up loving in this movie.
Yep. So my problem with that is this uncle that they've just figured out has betrayed them, that has been their trusted advisor forever, since they've grown up as little boys. The uncle's always been there. The uncle saved their father when he was a kid, which again is the moment he was trying to go back to. They just leave him. They just leave him laying there. Like 18 seconds ago, he was a cherished family member. Now they've stabbed him and they go, let's go, brothers. We out.
That's a betrayal.
What? I don't know. That just seems a little bit ridiculous to me, but it's whatever. It's fine. So then the movie's over, and they were going to, like, marry off the princess like they were going to do before, but at the last minute they're like, nah, you got too many wives. We're going to give you to Dastan. And so then she's like, she realizes when he gives the knife back to her that, like, she didn't remember any of this because all of time has been rewound and he's the only one that knows. But now she's like, oh, well, maybe there could be something here. They've rewound the entire movie and it never happened. Do you feel cheated? The entire movie never happened. At that point, they've taken away everything. I always
do. I always do. When they rewound to the whole beginning, I was like, are you kidding? I was like, are we in the beginning of the movie again? I knew it would happen because so many characters died. I'm like, the only thing you can do is reset everything, especially because, like, throughout the whole movie, these two hate each other. And then when they kissed, well, first of all, gross. I was like, yeah, their relationship is built on nothing. All these movies are always, love is always the person you initially hate. And then just one moment, it's like, we almost died. I guess we'll kiss now. And so at the end of this movie, it felt like none of that was earned at all. And at one point, he's like, we're going to get married. And she's like, I don't even know you. And I was really waiting. I've been listening to Groundhog Day, the musical, so much. I was just waiting for him to go, you like boats, but you don't like deep water. Like, starting to sing how he knows everything about her because they had this whole adventure together.
Right.
I don't know if he's ever going to tell her. Is he ever going to be like, here's what actually happened. You died and everyone died and I saved everyone. He's never going to say that.
So Arch Fox said in chat, sorry to stab and run. And then I feel cheated, Tom's favorite words. So anyway, so that's the end of the movie. They all live happily ever after. And it could have had sequels. It could have, there could have been big tie-ins. This could have been a big franchise for them, just like Lone Ranger could have been a big franchise for them, just like, any of these could have been big franchises, but this movie just didn't hit. And then I think it was like, okay, we're done with that. We're not going to bring this back for sequels or whatever. I would like to see them bring this back as a Disneyplus series because I do think that the adventures are there, the stories are there within the Prince of Persia library of games, that they could do more than the Sands of Time. I think they called it the Sands of Time because they thought there would be sequels. But there, again, it didn't hit big enough. There just wasn't enough Jake without his shirt on, I guess. I don't know how all that works. But I will say, we've only hit 32 likes, so we'll hold this off till next week when Patrick and I do, unless we happen to get some in the next minutes. But we gotta end because there's another show on another network that's coming on, and we've got to cut to that. But Patrick is going to be on next week, and we're going to talk about Darby O'Gill and the Little People, for St. Patrick's Day. That's going to be great. But I want to know right now, you've been on this show many times, Tyler. You know the drill. I need to know, would you recommend this movie?
This was another movie that you and I were both like, let's see if we can find some weird trash-type movies we think are bad. We watched Chicken Little, and I was pleasantly surprised that movie was pretty decent. So I watched this with the knowledge that people said it was terrible, and I found I did enjoy some of it. Would I recommend it? I might actually say yes. I think there's plenty in the time travel bits that are really cool. And, well, first of all, shirtless Jake Gyllenhaal and shirtless Sasso mostly throughout this movie. Alfred Molina is such a funny treasure in this movie. And you look at Ben Kingsley once, you're like, I know he's going to be the bad guy of this movie, obviously. But is it a good video game movie? It didn't have enough of that unique thing that would make me want to see more of these characters. I think after Pirates, they were like, oh, I get it. We just hire a bunch of well-known actors and sink a bunch of money into this thing. But you really need to have a script that is made with love for the original source material. Pirates was just like, let's make a cheesy, fun, swashbuckling adventure with supernatural elements, some references to the ride. And in this one, they were like, I think they did plenty with the video game mechanic. I just didn't think enough of the likable characters and the story were really in place.
Would you recommend this movie?
Yes. I would say check it out. It was an enjoyable movie.
Sorry, we're on a clock. I'm
watching the time, too.
There was a lot of movies that happened during this time, like Sorcerer's Apprentice, like Tron Legacy, like Tomorrowland, like Prince of Persia, like John Carter, like The Lone Ranger, that I feel like were better than the credit that they got. I think it's a good adventure movie. I think that it's a fun movie. I think it definitely is a little bit hard to follow sometimes, so I wouldn't watch this while you're also playing Emoji Blitz, but I would watch this movie. I would recommend this movie. I do think this is a good movie, and I think that you'll enjoy it. And it is a lot different than a lot of things that are on Disneyplus, because it's not your typical, like a princess movie or your typical Disney movie. I do think this is a fun movie, and I would recommend it to anybody who hasn't seen it, especially because, again, Jake Gyllenhaal, right? I mean, how could you go wrong? I'm just kidding. He's fine. Tyler, thank you so much for doing this movie with me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for everybody who tuned in with us. We really do appreciate you. Thank you to our WIGS. If you are not a member of our WIGS program, go to patreon.com/WIGS. Also, if you want to get some cool merch like this, we have the carouselofproducts.com, where you can go get all kinds of Park and WDWNT merchandise. And you cannot get the thing that Tyler's wearing. That is exclusive to Tyler. So thank you guys so much. We will see you next Tuesday at 9 o'clock for Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Have a great week.
Bye.